It was a bustling Friday evening at one of the most exclusive steakhouses in Manhattan, the kind of place where reservation wait lists stretched for months and patrons were dressed to impress. A well-dressed hostess stood at the front, her smile fading as a man walked in. His clothes were simple, jeans and a worn-out jacket. Before he could even utter a word, she gave him a cold stare. "Sir, this restaurant is fully booked. Perhaps you'd find something more suitable down the street," she said dismissively, gesturing towards a much cheaper diner nearby. The man's calm expression didn't waver. "I have a reservation," he replied firmly, showing his name on the list. The hostess's smile turned into a smirk, as if she couldn't believe someone like him belonged there. Her next words set the tone for what would be a shocking and unforgettable night. Someone must have made a mistake. People like, "You don't belong here." Marcus Langston was no ordinary man. Born into a struggling household in Atlanta, Georgia, he'd faced hardship from the start. As a child, he would sit by the dim light of a street lamp, reading borrowed books because his family couldn't afford electricity. By the time he was 15, he had already learned the art of coding by watching free tutorials at the local library. Against all odds, Marcus turned his passion for technology into a revolutionary software company. At just 32, his company was valued at over $10 billion, and Marcus had earned a spot on Forbes's 30 Under 30 list. But despite his massive wealth, Marcus had remained grounded. He frequently spoke about the importance of staying humble, often reminding his team, "Wealth may change your bank account, but it shouldn't change your heart." This humility extended to his lifestyle. While he could afford private jets and lavish yachts, Marcus often dressed casually and preferred to drive himself. Tonight, though, his modest attire was a deliberate choice. He had heard rumors of how some high-end establishments in New York discriminated based on appearances. He wanted to see for himself if these whispers were true. When Marcus stepped into the restaurant, he didn't expect red carpets or special treatment, but what greeted him was far worse, the cold sting of judgment. As the hostess sneered at him, Marcus took a moment to glance around. He saw the disdain in the eyes of other diners, well-dressed men adjusting their ties, women with designer purses clutching their champagne glasses as they whispered about him. It was as if his mere presence disrupted their evening. For a brief second, memories of his youth resurfaced, the days when he had been ignored at stores or followed suspiciously by security guards just for walking in. Despite being one of the wealthiest men in the world, Marcus felt the familiar weight of prejudice pressing down on him. Still, he didn't let it show. With a deep breath, he walked out of the restaurant, his heart heavy but his mind sharp. Sitting in his car, he thought about what had just happened. He didn't want revenge, not in the conventional sense. What he wanted was justice. He wanted to expose the truth about how appearances often dictated treatment. And then, as the city lights glimmered around him, an idea began to take shape. A plan so bold it would leave the restaurant staff and patrons questioning everything they believed. The next morning, Marcus couldn't shake the events of the previous night. The hostess's sneer, the whispers of the diners, and the blatant disregard for his humanity, it all played on a loop in his mind. But it wasn't just the humiliation. It was the realization of how systemic such behavior was. He had seen it before, but experiencing it firsthand reminded him of how much work was still left to be done. Determined to understand the full extent of the restaurant's behavior, Marcus decided to test them further. That same day, he sent one of his assistants to make another reservation at the steakhouse. This time, the assistant, dressed in an expensive suit and driving a luxury car, was warmly greeted and immediately seated, despite not having an actual reservation. But the story didn't stop there. Marcus also hired an independent investigator to dig deeper into the restaurant's practices. What came back was even more alarming than he had anticipated. Reports from former employees revealed a pattern. People of color and those dressed modestly were often turned away or given the least desirable tables. Staff were instructed to prioritize high-value customers, defined as those who looked wealthy or influential. Complaints of discrimination were routinely ignored or dismissed by management. Armed with this knowledge, Marcus's anger turned into resolve. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about every person who had ever been made to feel less than because of their race or appearance. As Marcus pieced together his plan, he knew one thing for certain. The restaurant's days of unchecked discrimination were over, and he wasn't going to just expose them. He was going to turn the very system they relied on against them. Marcus was no stranger to strategy. After all, his success in the tech world was built on outsmarting competitors and finding innovative solutions. This situation, however, required a different kind of ingenuity. Marcus wanted to send a powerful message, one that would resonate far beyond the walls of the steakhouse. His first move was subtle, but calculated. He booked out the entire restaurant for a private event under a pseudonym, using one of his shell companies. The reservation was set for a Friday night, the restaurant's busiest evening. The staff, oblivious to his true identity, eagerly accepted the large deposit, thinking they'd secured a big payday. But Marcus wasn't planning a typical dinner. On the night of the event, the restaurant staff prepared for what they expected to be an exclusive gathering of elite clients. Instead, when the doors opened, the guests were unlike anything they'd seen before. Marcus had invited an eclectic mix of people: construction workers, single mothers, teachers, and young professionals. Many were dressed casually, some even in work uniforms. These were everyday people, those who might have been turned away under normal circumstances. As the guests settled in, Marcus entered the restaurant. This time, he wasn't alone. With him was a film crew and several journalists from major media outlets. Cameras flashed as Marcus walked to the center of the dining room, signaling for everyone's attention. "Good evening," he began, his voice calm but commanding. "A few nights ago, I was turned away from this very restaurant, not because I didn't have a reservation, but because I didn't look the part. Tonight, I wanted to show that worth isn't determined by appearances or wealth. Every person here deserves respect, no matter how they dress, what they earn, or the color of their skin." The room erupted in applause, while the staff watched in stunned silence. But Marcus wasn't done yet. Turning to the cameras, he announced, "This isn't just about me, it's about holding places like this accountable. Discrimination has no place in our society, and I'm here to ensure it ends." Little did the staff know, Marcus had already taken additional steps. Behind the scenes, he had filed formal complaints with the city's Human Rights Commission, highlighting the restaurant's discriminatory practices. He also funded a campaign to raise awareness about bias in service industries, using his personal experience as a rallying cry. As the night unfolded, the once exclusive steakhouse transformed into a celebration of inclusivity and equality. And Marcus, he watched with quiet satisfaction, knowing this was just the beginning of a much larger movement. As the event reached its climax, Marcus took the microphone again, this time with a sharpness in his tone that commanded absolute silence. The journalists in the room leaned forward, sensing the moment would be headline-worthy. He looked directly at the restaurant manager and staff, who now stood awkwardly in the corner, unsure of what to do. "Let me tell you who I am," Marcus began, his voice steady but resolute. "My name is Marcus Langston. I'm the founder and CEO of Langston Tech, a company that employs over 25,000 people and generates billions in revenue each year. But that night, when I came in dressed like any regular man, you didn't see me for who I was. You only saw what I wore, and you made your judgment based on that." Gasps rippled through the room. The Staff's faces turned pale as realization dawned. The same man they had dismissed as unworthy was not only one of the wealthiest people in the country, but now held the power to expose their actions on a grand scale. Marcus wasn't done. He turned to the crowd, now captivated by his every word. This is not just about me. This is about everyone who has ever been treated unfairly because of their race, their clothes, or their background. Discrimination hides in plain sight, and it's time we bring it to light. Then, in a twist that no one saw coming, Marcus revealed his final move. He had quietly purchased the building that housed the steakhouse, through a deal brokered earlier. That week, he now owned the property outright. I want to ensure that this space becomes a place where everyone feels welcome, not just the privileged few, he declared. This restaurant, as you know it, will be shutting down. In its place, we will open a community center that celebrates diversity and inclusivity. The crowd erupted into applause, while the restaurant staff stood frozen, realizing the magnitude of their mistake. Marcus's vision wasn't about revenge. It was about transformation. Before leaving the podium, Marcus offered a final reflection. Next time you look at someone, don't just see their clothes or their skin color, see their humanity, because in the end, that's what matters most. With that, the cameras caught Marcus smiling. Faintly as he stepped away, his mission accomplished. The restaurant, once a symbol of exclusivity and prejudice, had become a beacon of hope for change. As the weeks passed, Marcus's bold actions sent shockwaves through the community and beyond. News outlets picked up the story, highlighting how one man turned a personal experience of discrimination into a platform for change. The footage from the event went viral, with millions of viewers applauding Marcus for his courage and vision. The former steakhouse location quickly transformed into what Marcus had promised: a vibrant community center offering free meals, career workshops, and cultural events. People from all walks of life visited, finding a space where they felt valued and respected. The center became a living testament to Marcus's belief that everyone, no matter their background, deserved dignity. The restaurant staff's actions became a cautionary tale, sparking nationwide discussions about discrimination in the service industry. Policies were reviewed, and many businesses started implementing diversity and inclusion training, hoping to avoid the same fate. For Marcus, the greatest reward wasn't the applause or recognition, but the small, heartfelt moments. A single mother finding resources to support her family, a young entrepreneur inspired to follow their dreams, or a stranger saying, "Thank you for standing up for people like me." As Marcus stood outside the new center one evening, watching families and friends gather inside, he felt a sense of fulfillment unlike any other. His journey had taken him from a young boy reading under a street lamp to a billionaire fighting for justice, not with his wealth, but with his heart. And in that moment, Marcus realized something profound. True power wasn't about money or status. It was about using your voice, your platform, and your influence to create a world where everyone could thrive. As the video concludes, the narrator poses a question to the audience. What would you do if you were in Marcus's shoes? Have you ever experienced or witnessed discrimination? Share your thoughts in the comments below and help us spread this powerful message. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more inspiring stories.